Hello my dear students, welcome to Teacher at Home. Today class we are going to learn the first chapter, that is Introduction, Tracing Changes Through a Thousand Years. Okay, so let's start the chapter. Take a look at Maps 1 and 2. Map 1 was made in 1154 by the Arab geographer Al-Idrisi. The section reproduced here is a detail of the Indian subcontinent from his larger map of the world. Map 2 was made in 1970 by a French cartographer. One who draws maps, it is known as cartographer. The two maps are quite different, even though they are of the same area. ഒരേ ഏരിയയിലാണെങ്കിലും രണ്ടും വ്യത്യസ്തമാണ്. In Idrishi's map, South India is where we would expect to find North India, and Sri Lanka is the island at the top. That is North India and Sri Lanka is the island at the top. Place names are marked in Arabic. See here. And there are well-known names like Kannauj in Uttar Pradesh, spelled in the maps as Kannauj. Okay, map 2 was made nearly 600 years after map 1. During the period, the information about the subcontinent have changed considerably. This map seems more familiar to us, and the coastal areas in a particular area are surprisingly detailed. Map was used by European sailors and merchants on their voyages. Look at the areas in the interior of the subcontinent of the map. Are they detailed as those of the coast? Follow the course of the river Ganga and see how it is shown. Equally important is the fact that the science of cartography different in two periods. When historians read documents, maps, and texts from the past, they have to be sensitive to the different historical background, the contents in which the information about the past was produced, new and old terminologies. In the context in which information is produced changes with the time. What about language and meanings? Historical records exist in a variety of languages which have changed considerably over the years. Medieval Persian, for example, is different from modern Persian. The difference is not just with regard to grammar and vocabulary. The meanings of words also change over time. Take the term Hindustan, for example. Today we understand it as India, the modern nation state. When the term was used in the 13th century by Minhaj I-Siraj, a chronicler who wrote in Persian, he meant the areas of Punjab, Haryana, and the lands between the Ganga and Yamuna. He used the term in a political sense for lands that were a part of the dominions of the Delhi Sultan. Areas included in this term shifted with the extent of the Sultanate, but the term never included South India. By contrast, in the earlier 16th century, Babur used Hindustan to describe the geography, the fauna, and the culture of the inhabitants of this subcontinent. As we will see later in the chapter, this was somewhat similar to the way the 14th century poet Amir Khusro used the word Hind. While the idea of a geographical and cultural entity like India did exist, the term Hindustan did not carry the political, national meanings which we associated with it today. Historians today have to be careful about the terms they use because they mean different things in the past. For example, a simple term like foreigner is used today to mean someone who is not an Indian. In the medieval period, a foreigner was any stranger who appeared, say, in given village, someone who was not part of the society of culture. In Hindi term, Pardesi might be used to describe such a person, and in Persian, Ajnabi. A city dweller therefore might have regarded a forest dweller as a foreigner. But two peasants living in the same village were not foreigners for each other to each other, even though they might have different religions or different backgrounds. So those coming from the outside only referred to as foreigners. Historians and their sources. Historians use different types of sources to learn about the past, depending upon the period of their study and the nature of the investigation. Last year, for example, you have read about rulers of the Gupta dynasty and the Harshavardhana. In this book, we will read about the following 1000 years from roughly 700 to 1750. We'll notice some continuity in the sources used by historians for the study of this period. They still rely on coins, inscriptions, architecture, and textual records for information. But there is also considerable discontinuity. The number and variety of textual records increased dramatically during this period. They slowly displaced other types of valuable information. Through this period, paper gradually became cheaper and more widely available. People used it to write holy texts, chronicles or rulers, letters and teaching of saints, petitions and judicial records, and for registers of accounts and taxes. Manuscripts were collected by wealthy people, rulers, monasteries, and temples. They were placed in libraries and archives. These manuscripts and documents provided a lot of detailed information to historians, but they are also difficult to use. There was no printing press in those days, so scribes copied manuscripts by hand. If you have ever copied a friend's homework, you would know that this is not a simple exercise. Sometimes you cannot read your friend's handwriting and are forced to guess what is written. As a result, there are small but significant differences in your copy of your friend's work. Manuscript copying is somewhat similar. As scribes copied manuscripts, they are also introduced small changes, a word here, a sentence there. These small differences grow over centuries of copying until manuscripts of the same text became substantially different from one another. These are the different kinds of Persian and Arabic. Reading of Persian and Arabic could make the difficult. Okay. Nastaliq style. Then we are totally dependent upon the copies made by later scribes. As a result, historians have to read different manuscript versions of the same text to guess what the author had originally written. On occasion, authors revise their chronicles at different times. The 14th century chronicler Ziauddin Barani wrote his chronicle first in 1376, 1356 and another version 2 years later. The two differ from each other, but historians did not know about the existence of the first version until the 1960s. It remained lost in large library collections. The social and political groups. The study of the 1000 years between 700 and 1750 is a huge challenge to historians, largely because of the scale and variety of developments that occurred over the period. At different moments in this period, new technologies made this appearance, like the Persian wheel in irrigation, the spinning wheel in weaving, and firearms in combat. New foods and beverages arrived in the subcontinent: potato, corn, chilies, tea, and coffee. Remember that all these innovations, new technologies, and crops came along with the people who brought other ideas with them as well. As a result, this was a period of economic, political, social, and cultural changes. We will learn about some of these changes in chapter 5. This was also a period of great mobility. Groups of people traveled along distances in search of opportunity. The subcontinent held immense wealth and the possibilities for people to carve a fortune. One group of people who became important in this period were the Rajput, a name derived from Rajaputra, the son of a ruler. Between the 8th and the 4th century, the term was applied more generally to a group of warriors who claimed Kshatriya caste status. The term included not just rulers and chieftains, but also soldiers and commanders who served in the armies of different monarchs all over the subcontinent. A chivalric code of conduct, extreme valor, and a great sense of loyalty were the qualities attributed to Rajput by the poet and bards. Other group of peoples such as the Marathas, Sikhs, Jats, Ahoms, and Kayasthas also used the opportunities at the age to become politically important. Throughout this period, there was a gradual clearing of forests and the extension of agriculture, a change faster and more complete in some areas than in others. Changes in the habitat forced many forest dwellers to migrate. Others started tilling the land and became peasants. These new peasant groups gradually became too influenced by regional market, chieftains, priests, monasteries, and temples. They became a part of large complex societies and were required to pay taxes and offer goods and services to local lords. As a result, a significant economic and social differences emerged among peasants. Some possessed more productive land, others also kept cattle, and some combined artisanal work with agricultural activity during the season. As society became more differentiated, people were grouped into jadis or subcastes and ranked on the basis of their background and their occupations. Ranks were not fixed permanently and varied according to the power, influence, and resources controlled by members of the jadi. The status of the same jadi could vary from area to area. Jadis framed their own rules and regulations to manage the conduct of the members. These regulations were forced by an assembly of elders described in some areas as the Jadi Panchayat. But Jadis were also required to follow the rules of the village. Several villages were governed by a chieftain. Together, they were only a small unit of a state. Region and empire. Large states like those of the Cholas, Tughlaqs, or Mughals encompassed many regions. A Sanskrit Prashasti praising the Delhi Sultan Ghiyasuddin Balban explained that he was the ruler of the vast empire that stretched from Bengal in the east to Ghazni in Afghanistan in the west and included all of South India. People of different regions, Gauda, Andhra, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Gujarat, apparently filed before his armies. Historians regard this as exaggerated claims of conquest. At the same time, they try to understand why rulers kept claiming to have control over different parts of the subcontinent, language, and region. In 1318, the poet Amir Khusro noted that there was a different language in every region in this land. Sindhi, Lahori, Kashmiri, Dwar, Varshamudri in South Karnataka, Telangana in Andhra Pradesh, then Gujarati, Gujari in Gujarat, Mabari in Tamil Nadu, Gauri in Bengal, Adi in East Uttar Pradesh, and Hindavi or the area around Delhi. Amir Khusro went on to explain that in contrast to these religions, to these languages, there was Sanskrit which do not belong to any region. Like Sanskrit is a common language. It was not an old language and common people do not know, only the Brahmins do. അല്ലേ കോമൺ ലാംഗ്വേജ് എന്ന് ഉദ്ദേശിച്ചത് അതിന് പ്രത്യേകമായിട്ടുള്ള ഏരിയ ഇല്ല, എല്ലാ ഭാഗത്തുമുള്ള ബ്രാഹ്മിൻസ് ആണ് ഈ ഭാഷ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നത്. Make a list of the languages mentioned by Amir Khusro. Prepare under list of the names of languages spoken today in the regions he mentioned. Underline the names that are similar and circle those that are different. By 700, many regions already possessed distinct geographical dimensions and their own language and cultural characteristics. You will learn more about this in Chapter 7. They were also associated with specific ruling dynasties. There was considerable conflict between these states. Occasionally, dynasties like the Chola, Khaljis, Tughlaq, and Mughal were able to build an empire that was pan-religion, regional spanning diverse regions. Not all these empires were equally stable or successful. When the Mughal Empire declined in the 18th century, it led to the re-emergence of the regional states, but the years of imperial pan-regional rule had altered the character of the regions. Across most of the subcontinent, the regions were left with the legacies of the big, small state that had ruled over them. This was apparent in the emergence of many distinct and shared traditions. In the realms of governance, management of the economy, eh, elite cultures, and language. Through the thousand years between 700 and 1750, character of different regions did not grow in isolation. This region felt the impact of larger pan-religion forces of integration without ever quite losing their distinctiveness. Old and new religions. Thousand years of history that we are exploring witnessed many developments in religious traditions. People believe in the divine was sometimes deeply personal, but more usually it was collective. Collective belief in a supernatural agency, religion, was often closely connected with the social and economic organization of local communities. As the social worlds of this group altered, so too did their belief. It was during this period that important changes occurred in what we call Hinduism today. This included the worshipping of new deities, the construction of temples by royalty, and the growing importance of Brahmanas, the priest, as dominant groups in a society. The knowledge of Sanskrit text earned the Brahmanas a lot to respect in society. Their dominant position was consolidated by the support of their patrons, new rulers searching for prestige. One of the major developments of this period was the emergence of the idea of bhakti, of a loving, personal deity that devotees could reach without the aid of priests or elaborate rituals. We'll be learning about these traditions in chapter 6. This was also the period when new religions appeared in the subcontinent. Merchants and migrants first brought the teachings of the Holy Quran to India in the 17th century. Muslims regarded Quran as a holy book and accept the sovereignty of the one God, Allah, whose love, mercy, and bounty embrace all those who believe in Him without regard of social background. Many rulers were patrons of Islam, and the ulama learned theologians and jurists. And like Hinduism, Islam was interpreted in a variety of ways by its followers. There was the Shia Muslims who believed that the Prophet Muhammad's son-in-law Ali was the legitimate leader of the Muslim community, and the Sunni Muslim who accepted the authority of the earlier leaders, caliphs of the community, and the succeeding caliphs. There were other important differences between the various schools of law, Hanafi and Shafi, mainly in India, in theology and mystic traditions. Thinking about time and historical periods. Historians do not see the time just as passing of hours, days, or years as a clock or a calendar. Time also reflects changes in social, economic organizations, in the persistence and transformation of ideas and beliefs. A study of time is made somewhat easier by dividing the past in large segments, periods that possess shared characteristics. In the middle of 19th century, British historians divided the history of India into three groups: Hindu, Muslim, and British. This division was based on the idea that the religion of rulers was only important historical change and there were no other significant developments in the economy, society, or culture. Such a division also ignored the rich diversity of the subcontinent. Few historians follow this periodization today. Most look to economic and social factors to characterize the major elements of different moments of the past. History you read last year included a wide range of early societies, hunter gatherers, early farmers, people living in towns and villages, and early empires and kingdoms. The histories you will be studying this year, often described as medieval, will find out more about the spread of peasant societies, the rise of religion, and imperial state formation, sometimes at the cost of pastoral and forest people. The development of Hinduism and Islam as major religions, or the arrival of European trading companies. This 1,000 years of Indian history witnessed considerable change. After all, the 16th and 18th century were quite different from the 8th or 11th. Therefore, describing the entire period as a historical unit is not without its problem. Moreover, the medieval period is often contrasted with the modern period. Modernity carries with it sense of material progress and intellectual advancement. This seems to suggest that the medieval period was lacking in any change whatsoever, but of course we know this was not the case. During these 1,000 years, societies of the subcontinent were transferred often and economies in several regions reached a level of prosperity that attracted the interest of European trading companies. As you read this book, look out the signs of change and the historical process at work. Also, whenever you can compare with what you read in this book with what you read last year, look out the changes and continuities whenever you can and look at the world around you to see what else has changed or remained the same. So that's all about this chapter. If you are interested, please do like, share and subscribe my channel. Okay, thank you.